That's fine. Okay, thank you, Laura, for agreeing to talk with me. First of all, I just wonder if you could tell me just generally what is your role here at the NAS in relation to it.
I am a senior events officer here at the National Autistic Society. I manage all the running events, so for example the Virgin London Marathon, the Royal Parks, which is happening this weekend, Silverstone Marathon and Half Marathon, Brighton, Berlin, so that's sort of my babies, all the running side of things, and I get to create working relationships with all the runners and supporters and things like that. I also manage challenge events like Tough Mudder, and any social events as well. We get the opportunity to be creative in that sort of field as well, so there's a couple of social events that I've organised that are coming up in the next few months as well. So yeah, so it's a big variety of amazing things. It's a very creative role as well, which is perfect. So yeah, and I love it here. It's great.
Great. And how did you become involved with the NES?
I basically I've been a musician my whole life, and for the last few years I was freelance musician, and I was doing sort of events, fundraising, freelance as well for people who were putting on charity events. And they would ask me, Laura, can you come and do this music event, can you set it up? So that's what I'd do. And then I got to the point where I was like, I'm not getting any younger and I can't be dancing around on stage forever. So I saw this job and I thought it was perfect for what I was looking for in terms of a career forward from the music side of things. And I applied for the job and I was extremely lucky to get it. So I'm very grateful to be here now.
Great. Can you tell us a bit more about your music? How did you get into that?
Yeah. I got a guitar when I was 14 and taught myself to play, and I've never looked back. I say that I'm no longer doing music full time. I still do music to this day. On the weekend I'm in a band and I write my own stuff. And I'm also a Pink tribute act. So it's all great fun. So I don't think that's the one constant I've had in my life is music, and it really is. It's such it's a beautiful thing to be able to do music and perform, and it's a great way to connect with people, and and I feel very lucky to be able to do that. And so yeah, I've just really kind of pushed myself through my musical career. Like I said, teach myself how to play guitar, and then having my first gig when I was 17. When I was in the RAF, and then I used to gig a lot in bands in the Air Force, and it just kind of built from there. So and there's so many avenues you can explore within music. So it's a great area to be involved in. So yeah.
You mentioned that you taught yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I've experienced related to autism and Asperger.
Yeah.
How did you find teaching yourself to play the guitar? How did you do it, basically?
I remember when I got my guitar for Christmas, there was free guitar lessons at school, so I had one guitar lesson and I got bored very easily, and I was like, I can't do this. And so went onto the internet, went onto YouTube, and I learnt the chords, like sort of taught myself how the chords sort of worked, and then I would find the tab and the chords of songs that I loved, and then I would just play them and play along to the songs, and that was really helpful because I sort of learned how to play by ear as well. So, and I learned how to read tablature, and yeah, so I love a challenge, so that was a good challenge for me. So yeah.
Did you found it? You say you found it a challenge. Did you find it difficult but welcoming? Like you wanted it to be difficult?
Absolutely, yeah. It was, at times I thought I'm never going to get this chord, or I'm never going to be able to perfect this song, but there was something inside me that really wanted to do it and really wanted to have that end goal and go, no, you can do this if you just keep pushing, and you literally can do anything if you put your mind to it, I believe. And I did. I just kept going, and it's a beautiful feeling when you finally hit that chord and you're like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think that's important? An essential factor if you're going to do something, it needs to be something you really want to do?
Yeah, oh,
Otherwise,
absolutely. I think
otherwise it won't happen.
not necessarily won't happen. I think if you're completely passionate about something, then you will put everything into it to make it happen. And yeah, there'll be knockbacks on the way, and there'll be times when you think, oh, I don't know why I'm doing this, or why am I up at 4 o'clock in the morning driving home from a part of the country I don't, for the sake of a gig. But the feeling you get when you're actually doing it, it outweighs the rest of it, and I think if you're not passionate about something, then it's a tough one, really. I wouldn't really force myself to do something I wasn't really that passionate about. So I think, there has to be a foundation of this is what I want to do, and I think I can carry this through, sort of feeling, yeah.
Great, okay. Let's move on to more of what you do here at the NES.
Yep.
The NES has projects known as Autism Friendly Performance. Do you think you could explain a little bit about what Autism Friendly means?
So, for example, we've got an event happening on December the 15th at Coco in Camden. And my colleague Ellie Badcock has organised that. And basically it's an event that will give people with autism who probably normally wouldn't feel that they could go to a gig or something like that due to like noise or crowd or things like that, lighting. This event, we've made sure that it's autism friendly, as you say, so the lighting is going to be set at a constant sort of level. The audience have been asked to wave their hands instead of clapping, and it's a really, all the acts are acoustic, so it's not really loud or that's the sort of, we kind of try to keep in mind of what's difficult for people with autism and what would deter them from going to enjoy a live music gig. So that's probably how I'd explain it.
Do you think autism friendly is absolutely essential for someone with autism or Asperger?
I think it makes the situation a lot easier for them, but at the same time it also depends on what scale on the spectrum that they are, I suppose. Somebody with autism might not have as many sensitivities to somebody who might have a lot more, so it's kind of finding that happy medium, I guess, and it's also, it gives people the option to go if they want to, and if they don't, then it makes it a lot more inviting, I suppose.
Yeah. You said just then you actually asked yourself the question, what is difficult for someone on the spectrum?
Yeah.
Do you think you could explore that a little bit further? I mean, in your opinion, what do you think is difficult for someone on the spectrum? Or what sort of things?
Yeah. So as far as I'm aware, so social interaction, sensitivity to noise, and lighting, and things that a lot of people take for granted, that a lot of people aren't aware of, that they don't really have the understanding to know that things that we would take for granted, that other people with autism don't have the choice to take for granted, because that's sort of how they have to live their life every day, and I think there's a lot of different areas that people with autism have, and that's kind of my idea of it.
That's very accurate. Yeah, that's good. We might come back to that. Actually.
That's fine.
That's good. Do you think, just going back to autism-friendly performance and theatre, do you think that there is a future for autism-friendly performance? Where do you see it? Where do you see it going? Like, say, in 10 years?
Yeah. Well, if we look at statistics, for example, I think the statistics are like 700,000 people in the UK are affected by autism has autism or their family member all connected in some way. So that's a lot of people in the UK, and I think absolutely, I think there should be an avenue where that's definitely explored or catered to give people the opportunity to go and see theatre, and maybe, you know, just to expand on your everyday theatre shows or your live music, and just make those little tweaks to make it, as you say earlier, autism friendly. And with the amount of people in the UK who are connected to or affected by autism, I think absolutely it has its own sort of avenue, I believe.
Well, say for a moment that autism friendly, the term, didn't exist, the whole concept of it didn't exist. Do you think it would be possible for someone on the spectrum to achieve the similar goals without it? In a neurotypical environment, for example.
Yeah, I think so. I think although autism friendly it's almost putting a label onto something that is making something easier for people with autism. So if that label wasn't there, then absolutely, I think all it takes is one person to go, actually, do you know what, then why if people with autism can't do this, how can we make that happen? You know, so I think, yeah, absolutely, it would happen anyway if there wasn't the label of autism friendly.
But do you think you could expand a bit on how you think that could happen? Elaborate a little bit on that?
I think, for example, well, we're already doing it here, so it would take somebody to want to actually go, you know what, let's make this bigger. Let's push this out to theatres and live music venues and musicians, even musicians possibly with family members with autism, to maybe encourage the gigs which make it easier for people with autism. So yeah, I think with a bit of work behind it, it could definitely be a successful, even if it was just, you know, every few months there was that particular gig was an autism friendly gig. And advertised as that, and made into a separate sort of, I don't want to say business, but rather than the live music business, you've got all your different types of gigs and your autism friendly gigs. You know, so that would be something that people with autism could go, let's see what autism friendly gigs are on this month, or you know.
If assuming that I always feel that a change has to be made somewhere in order to create the autism friendly environment.
Absolutely.
If you agree on that, would you say that if someone on the spectrum if something could be adjusted to create a new environment for someone with autism, how do you think that could work? I mean, do you think an individual would have to change more, or do you think the surroundings, or even going as far as saying society at large, do you think the change would have to come from the individual or more from neurotypical world?
I think it would always have to start with an individual, and then it would expand from there. I can imagine there'd be a lot of planning behind it to start with, building a team of people, having a good business plan behind the idea, and then move it forward, target audience, target certain areas of people where you want to move this on to, and then it expands and it would grow from there. So yeah, I think it takes one person to go, let's give this a go, and are you with me, sort of thing. Get a group of people together, and then
and it's your view that one person should be the individual on the spectrum. You believe it should start?
Not necessarily. No, on the spectrum, not necessarily. Not with autism. I think if it's, again, going back to being passionate about it, there's something, if somebody feels passionate about wanting to make a difference, then it can be anybody who's got that drive within them to make that change, I think,
Okay. Moving on to a more general outlook of autism, what do you think is the common neurotypical response to autism and Asperger's?
From a perspective of people who don't have autism, or
from the perspective, how do you think autism is viewed in the from society in the real world?
I think it doesn't have the understanding that it deserves, and I think because it's we were talking about this the other day actually. Autism isn't something that is instantly noticeable. So, unless you were used to being around people with autism, so for example, you could be on a bus and there could be someone with autism, with quite severe autism, and you'd probably just think, well, I personally wouldn't, but you'd hate to think that some people don't have the understanding to actually go, that they might have autism. They wouldn't know that. I think a lot of people don't know that, and I think that's what we're trying to do as the NES, is to raise awareness about autism and get the word out and make people understand what the different types of autism are and what people with autism may act like, maybe don't want to have a social interaction with you for this reason, etc., etc. So I think the understanding of autism could be a lot greater. In my personal opinion, it's not big enough. Yeah.
Do you think the general outlook, like everything that you've just described, do you think that changes with different environments? Like, for example, do you think the general response of autism is different in the city or different in the country, or different? Do you believe it changes? Do you think people, because obviously people are different everywhere you go.
Absolutely.
So do you think that changes the outlook of autism, the way it's received or perceived?
Yeah, I think so. I think different social environments have different social approaches, I suppose. So, for example, if we were to use the examples of city and the country, in the city, you hardly know anybody on a personal basis. So, I can imagine the outlook or the understanding of autism is a lot less in the city. Whereas in the country, being from Wales and being a country girl, people know each other, and and there would be a bit more of an understanding. It'd be like, why is John saying that, or why is he doing that? So, he's got autism. Oh, okay, yeah. And then that would spread within that social environment, and then people would have a lot more understanding, So I think, it does depend on the interaction that people have within the social environment, and with regards to how close-knit the community is, or how not. I think, it's more about community, maybe. Yeah.
Do you think, this is from a personal outlook, since being here in the city for 3 weeks, I've noticed something, and I'm going to put that to you in a question. Do you think, this is not literal, but do you think that autism exists in the city? By that, what I mean is people don't seem to notice at all.
Yeah.
I mean, don't even want to know.
Yeah.
So in the country where I'm from, for example, people are at least willing to listen.
Absolutely.
If I try to explain. But here in the city, people just sort of nod. And move on. So do you understand what I mean? And
absolutely.
Do you think that autism effectively exists in the city?
I think it absolutely does. I think it's more the people on the receiving end. I think it's down to ignorance, if I'm honest. And I think people don't want to understand it, be it they're too busy, or they don't want to take that on, or they don't want to understand it because maybe they feel it will affect them in some sort of way. So I think especially in London, it's such a busy city, and everyone is such a rat race, and they're, blinkered almost, they've just got one place to go, and they don't, I think city life does have a big effect on all sorts of different things, and I think, ignorance is bliss for some people in the city. I think that's what they think anyway. Yeah.
So what do you think are from your experience, what do you think could be the differences between living with autism or autistic spectrum disorder of any kind in the country and living and working with it in the city? What do you think the social and professional differences between the two lifestyles are?
From my understanding, I understand it's difficult for people with autism to get a good start in life in the first place. So it's difficult to find a job, possibly. So I think on a professional level it is difficult. But I think I'd like to think that once people have their jobs and people have more of an understanding of who they are as a person, that therefore would broaden people's horizons on autism and things like that. So I think it's just more about people giving it a bit of a chance, or taking time to understand autism. Would have a massive difference on social and professional levels for people with autism. I think it's one of those things that, not that I'm comparing it with your cancer research or anything like that. People with cancer, it's there, it's happening, you can see it, and whereas autism, you can't see it. It's not something you can see, so I can imagine it's very difficult to try and get it, trying to explain yourself all the time, or, so, it's something that I feel, since working for the NES, I feel very passionate about, and I really want to raise awareness about it, and how we can do that, we're trying, at least, so, yeah.
You say you can't see autism, which obviously you can't. I've heard that so many times, I've said it so many times. Do you think, other than the work that you do, creating awareness, do you think there is or could be a way to get people to see it, in a sense?
Yeah, I think, again, it's more about, it's all about raising awareness again, and just kind of recognising certain aspects of autism, I suppose. It's a tough question, actually. I don't know.
I mean, for example, the only way that I can get people to see the fact that I've got it is by showing my card.
Your card,
But other than that, all I can do is just keep on saying. Even then, there's no real proof. So I was just wondering about the actual visibility, the appearance of it.
Without having to
create awareness, first off.
I think it's a tough one. It really is, because I mean, it varies in so many different ways. I'm not really sure how.
That's okay. I was just, that wasn't an official question. I was just wondering.
No.
So how do you think that living and working in the two different environments, the country and the city, from whatever experience you may have, how do you think that affects an individual? So focusing on the city, how do you think that would generally affect someone on the spectrum?
Oh, massively.
Massively?
I think if, say for example, somebody on the spectrum was living in the country, then moved to the city, for example, that's a huge culture shock, isn't it? You get used to one environment, you get used to, your neighbours, your family's around, your friends, you're used to your view out your bedroom window, whatever it may be, and then you move to London and there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of people everywhere, and there's buildings and there's no trees and there's vehicles everywhere, and I can imagine it's very pressing on the anxiety levels. I can imagine would shoot up through the roof. So.
But do you think that could be a good thing in the long run? Do you think a person with autism can easily adjust to it, or adjust to it at all? Or I mean, obviously, it's a new way of life for anyone.
Absolutely.
Of course, there's no real difference. But obviously, for someone with autism or whatever, it's a different approach to it. So what do you think the differences are there? Do you think it would take a longer period of time? Or
I think, like you say, for anyone it's a big culture shock, and for anybody obviously but for somebody with autism, I suppose there are services that we can offer to help make the integration a little bit easier, and which is something that shouldn't be ashamed of having to get help to adjust into a big change when change is a massive problem, not a problem, but a massive part of somebody's life with autism. So I absolutely do believe that they can adjust, but maybe there would be with a bit more help with some people with autism, maybe other people that can quite happily get along with their own confidence and knowledge. So again, I think it would differ for different people, if that makes
so
sense.
you might think that more support in the city would be more essential than support in the country. Support. I'm not saying support isn't important in the country, but you think it would become a little more essential if it's a city life?
Yeah. This is obviously saying if they'd moved from the country to the city,
Yes.
had they grown up in the city, that'd be something they'd be used to. Again, maybe moving from city to country, that'd be a change and having to adjust to that. So I do believe moving into the city. Again, here at the NAS, that's what we're trying to do, is trying to make people more aware of the services and the help that there is available for people with autism. And for people with autism to actually go, do you know what, I'm going to give this group a call and say, I'm having a bit of trouble here, you know, what have you guys done? Or just have advice from other people with autism, and maybe groups for people with autism to go along to, and
So you think that growing up in the city and moving to the city, you think that would be different? You think that's a different aspect? So do you think it would be easier for someone with autism to be born and bred and raised in the city?
Yeah.
Do you think, well, it's still a difficult life, of course, but do you think it would be easier to grow up in the city as opposed to moving? Easier, for lack of a better word.
I think so, because you say if you were born and bred and grew up in the city and that was it, you never sort of left that environment, then you get used to things, you get into a routine, and you kind of make it as comfortable as possible for yourself. Whereas if you were to move from the city to the country, again, that would be a change in the routine. There wouldn't be a shop just on the corner. It'd be like, oh, how do I get to the shop to get my food? I've got to drive or get a bus. I need to get a bus. Where the bus is, I don't know. So little things like that. I think it's all about routine, and any change in that is a massive. So having that essential help, I think, is good.
So you're saying routine can exist in the city as well as in the country?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's okay. What do you think are the benefits of living and working in the city for someone with autism?
So the access to all the help that people with autism can get in the city. So, for example, they could come here to us. We can advise them on branches that we have in the city, schools for people with autism. There's a lot more options to accommodate for people with autism, to make their steps into growing up and their lives and their future careers and things like that a lot less, not stressful, there's a lot more options, and it's a lot more open, I think. Whereas outside of the city, you'd probably have to go a bit further to find a school for people with autism, or a bit further to get specialist help. So the good thing and the advantages about being in the city is that there's a lot more of that help in a lot of different places. So I think it does have its advantages for that.
And what do you think are the drawbacks of living in the city? If any?
If any. The noise. Even I struggle with the noise. So the noise, the constant rush of different things happening all the time, I think, and moving from one environment to another environment very quickly. I don't know if you've noticed that you could be in one street in London, then you could go to another one and it's completely different, and a different shop here and a different, yeah. For me, I find that exciting, but for somebody with autism, that could be very overwhelming, I can imagine, so yeah.
What do you think could be done to help people who are neurotypical understand autism further? You probably already answered this with awareness, but could you maybe elaborate on with a bit more specific? You know, do you think something specific could be done to help neurotypicals understand what people with autism live with and go through?
Absolutely. I think the only way to really get it out there is probably media, because to try and get people to read about it is people don't really want to sit and have to read about something if it's not, you know, easily accessible. I think there was a recent advert that was created, and it was fantastic. I'm not sure if it was created here at the NAS, but it was basically, it went into, short story short, there was a water dripping out of a tap, and that then expanded into like the different colours behind the tap were all kind of blurring, and then the walls were all sort of like, it was fantastic, and it just gave you a really good idea how that one drip may become annoying for us, we just turn it off and just carry on with everyday lives, but whereas everything else around that as well was just as overwhelming and overbearing for that person with autism in that advert. So yeah, I think having adverts pushed out, you know, like your Macmillan adverts that go out there, and British Heart Foundation have adverts on TV. I think having adverts on televisions, radio, you know, explaining the things that people with autism have to live with is probably the way to get it out there in the first instance.
Do you think autism could be a gift?
Yes, absolutely, without a doubt. The people I've met since working for the NES, I've met some of the most beautiful people inside and out, and it massively is a gift, and I think, I need to say no more, it massively is, some of the most amazing children and adults and families, and the way it brings families together, and the way of seeing what it does to people and how they make their lives about that. It's incredible to see, it really is. Yeah.
Okay, it's firm belief there, I like that. Do you think autism, just going back briefly to Autism Friendly, do you think that autism friendly productions should be shown on a wider scale, at least eventually, like say on the West End?
Yeah.
Do you think that should happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people with autism should have the opportunity to go to the West End and see a show that's catered for them, and the environment is made for them, you know, because like I said, there's so many hundreds of thousands of people in the UK that probably wouldn't even think twice about going to a theatre show in fear of of the unexpected, whereas if they knew that the show was autism friendly, they could go and enjoy it, and like I said, even if it's just like once a month there's an autism friendly show, be it a matinee, be it an evening show, you know, who knows, but I really do think that would be fantastic if that did happen.
Do you think it will happen?
So, like I said, it just takes one person to get that ball rolling to make it happen, so...
But do you think it will? Do you think we might get to a point, like as I said earlier, like in 10 years' time, do you think there might come a time when autism friendly or the whole autistic spectrum will be brought out? Because at the moment it sort of seems to me to be kind of a one thing, it's very withdrawn, and it's only brought up occasionally, but do you think there'll be a time when it will be a part of just the whole world,
Mm.
and it will just be accepted. Do you think that will happen?
I really hope it is, and I think the way that things are going and the awareness that's being raised, it definitely has the opportunity to get to that point. I think what we need to do is really push awareness about autism to get to the point where it becomes part of everyday life, and I see no reason why it couldn't happen. With regards to it, you'd have to go to Parliament and speak to Parliament about it, and really get in depth with it, because, for example, it's a disability, and you go to the cinema, you go to certain shops, and they will accommodate for, not that I'm comparing it, but there's accommodating areas in a lot of everyday life for people in wheelchairs, for example, things like that. Why isn't there things for people with autism, So I think, a change needs to happen, and people need to be more aware of it, rather than just turning a blind eye because that person's a bit different, when actually we should be accepting difference, not indifference. Just using the old NAS slogan there.
That's good. While researching for this, I was interested in this term friendly, autism friendly.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I mean, does that mean that it is viewed that the social environment is viewed as unfriendly, or?
I can see why it could come across that way, and I think, in my personal opinion, I think maybe autism friendly isn't the correct terminology, maybe, because when I think of autism friendly, I think of it's an environment that is suited towards people with autism. Now, that's not to say that the rest of society isn't friendly towards people with autism. That's it. So I think maybe